Greetings. Welcome to this latest video. I'm pretty excited about making it. Um, you're going to have mixed feelings about it. What this video is about is the newish Tithes and Offering Report that every union and conference and division and GC needs to make. I'm going to explain all about it and hopefully you get a good orientation to it. One important point that I want to make sure you're clear on is that I want you shooting the messenger. I am just the messenger. Several years ago, the General Conference, Annual Council, highest authority we have between sessions, voted a new tithe and offering report that they wanted every church level to make. Okay, so this tithe and offering report is for your conferences and missions and any field office, and for the unions and the divisions and the GC to make. We'll see all the rules in a minute. They voted it, and it has laid dormant in the policy manual for about 2 years now. And about a year ago, the GC made the report as required by policy, and then this past year they made all the divisions make it, and now it's time for all the unions to make it, and then all the conferences to make it. So it's sort of being rolled out, but we're sort of behind the curve on the SunPlus world, and so it's time for the conferences to start doing it. It will take about a year of doing the accounting, which I'm going to explain to you, before you can make the report. And so we need to get started now so we're able to make the reports by the time that people are starting to expect it. The philosophy about the proper use of tithe and offerings is well laid out in the policy, GC working policy, and in the division working policy. And so it's not part of the SunPlus world to decide what the proper use of tithe and what's not a proper use. We just read the policy, and we're willing to be helpful as much as we can in helping you make the decision. But our purpose here is to deliver the accounting mechanism to show that you have complied with the proper uses of tithe and offering, to help you comply and to show that you have complied with the proper uses of tithes and offerings. So we're more focused on the system to help you keep track, not the decision about whether this goes in this category or that category. That will require your judgment, and we'll help you understand the rules, and we'll get people to help us. But our job is to establish the ways that it needs to be done. And so that's what this video is about, is how what is the report and how are we going to modify the accounting system to be able to produce the report. So the report is not able to be done with the accounting system as it is currently deployed through most of the organizations. We have put in the newer system I'm going to define in a few organizations, but 99% of you are not doing the right accounting that will help you prepare the report. And you're not able to correctly and properly prepare the report without doing what we're about to explain. You could figure out something. I mean, you might be able to hack through the report. You may be able to hack through the report, pulling things from here and there, but it's not going to be any fun, and it's not going to be very accurate. Also, one of the principles that we are following, and I believe it's a good idea, especially since I think I thought it up, is the GC and the policy requires this report to be made every year after the year is over. You've got to make a report on how you spent tithes and offerings in the past year. Well, we feel like it's important for you to prepare the report and have the accounting system prepare the report every month so that you can track it during the year. So if something is being spent, let's say you're spending tithe in a way that you're not supposed to, you can spot it and rectify it before the year end. It doesn't do any good after the year end to prepare a report and discover you got all kinds of problems with the way you use tithe. So we are going to set up the system and include in the financial statements that run every month the tithes and offering report, so you can monitor the use of tithe to make sure things are being done properly, and you have time to rectify it before the end of the year. That's the spirit of what we're trying to do here. And so if it looks like we're doing overkill, it is because of that idea that you don't want to just after the year is over sit down and sort of pull figures together to make a report and then discover you're in an embarrassing situation. You want to recognize that you've gotten in a bad situation, and during the year when you still have time to properly and above board fix it. I don't mean changing entries, but make sure that you underspend tithe and other reasons so you still can cover this cost or whatever. That's the point. I hope you enjoy these videos. First part, maybe almost 2/3 of the video, will be explaining the policy and then what the reports need to look like. Everyone needs this, and everyone needs to comply with that policy and preparing those reports. The second part of the video is how you need to modify your accounting system and modify how you're doing accounting. That's sort of up to you. If you want to try to make the report without it, you can. I think you're going to see that it's not so bad. It's really simple to understand what we're doing. I mean, it is additional work for the bookkeepers. Don't get me wrong. When we're done, you say, man, this is going to be a lot of more work. Well, it's going to be a little bit more work for your bookkeepers. But setting it up is a 15-minute process. Getting your bookkeepers up to speed is another 15 minutes. So it's not hard to put into place. It's just another aggravation when you're writing a journal entry. Just stand by and watch what happens. Okay, so I'm going to change now over to start sharing my screen so you can see what needs to be done. Thanks. Okay, here we have a PDF of the GC working policy. In many divisions, the GC working policy is encapsulated into the working policy of the division, so there's supposed to be perfect harmony between the two. In GC working policy, there is a section here that is important for all of us to understand. If you've never spent time reading the policy manual, you really should, anybody in finance, because there's a whole world of rules in here that may or may not be properly captured in the accounting manual. Usually we just count on the accounting manual to keep us in line, but the one that are particularly interesting to us is in section S, called General Financial Policies, about rules about care and responsibility and planning and budgeting and borrowing and preparing reports, and about your compensation review committee and so forth and so on. So this policy that we're looking at today, though, isn't in the financial section. It is in the section called Tithes and Offerings. So in the Tithes and Offerings section, there's a whole pages and pages. Let's see, it starts on V4 and ends and goes all the way for about 54 pages about the proper use of tithe. And every treasurer should be completely familiar with what is included in that policy. But our project today is looking at this concept of accountability for the use of tithe, and that is V20 of section V, page 20. And here it is, and we'll go through this just a little bit with you. It talks about the operating cap of tithe at the General Conference is very interesting, and the promotion of the tithe plan, and it's got a section called Reporting and Monitoring. So our discussion today is policy V2020 is what we're preparing for. It says administrators and executive committees not only need to understand scriptural and spirit of prophecy counsel regarding the use of tithe and the policies that have been developed to guide the church in applying the counsel, but they also need to assess and evaluate its application within their territories. To assist this ongoing evaluation and monitoring, okay, ready for the rules, here they come. Each conference, mission, field, union, division, and the general conference shall make an annual report to its executive committee on the sources and uses of tithe as following. So this report has to be prepared and is presented to their executive committee. You're going to see that in a minute that it has further uses, but let's just go ahead with what this report to the executive committee must have. It first off starts off with tithe received, and it includes a list of A, B, C, D, E. Don't worry, there's a reason I'm being so deliberate here. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. And these are the types of breakdown they want on the sources of tithe, and then on the tithe received. Because of the flow-through nature of tithe, you take the tithe received from the members and tithe received from lower organizations. So a conference would have a lot of tithe received from members. A union would have tithe percentages received from lower organizations. The division would have that. Then tithe appropriations received from higher organizations and tithe received from any other source. And then you back out the tithe that you sent upward that was sent out. This is the tithe percent to higher organizations. This is not tithe appropriations and item E. And then the use of tithe, okay, is how much was spent on pastors, evangelists, and frontline workers, what was spent on headquarters operations, what was spent on education, and then read here carefully, education's got a little sub part to it, because education has to be broken down between what was spent on elementary schools, secondary schools, and the college and university level. Okay? How much was spent on direct evangelism? How much was spent on media outreach? How much was spent on literature evangelism and retirement fund? This would be employees that are covered as tithe, the amount that was paid toward this, even employees that were retired, if they were tithe-based employees, their contributions to their retirement is part of this, and other uses of tithe. And these more or less follow the tithe and offering rules explained earlier in the working policy. So if you go up here to the use of tithe chapter, right here, the use of tithe, you're able to read all about the proper uses of tithe, where it can be used. But it's fairly much outlined here. But the use of tithe chapter explains the use of tithe better than I'm doing here. So just read that chapter there. That is the source and use of tithe report that is being required. The policy prescribes the categories they want it broken into as far as how did it come in and the categories of where it went when it went out. Then it goes through, it has this requirement here, requirement 3, no surprise here, local conferences, missions, fields, union of churches shall report to their executive committee how the tithe was used within their territory. Simple enough. And unions shall report to their executive committee the way tithe was used in their own operations. That is, they've got to make this report for themselves, but also how tithe was used by all conferences, missions, and fields within their territory. So item 3, talking about local conferences, missions, and fields, has to roll up to item 4 so that it can be included in the union's report. And then the same thing happens with divisions. Divisions shall report to their executive committee the way tithe was used in their own operations and also how tithe was used by all unions and conferences and missions and fields and attached within their division. And then it rolls up to the general conference. The general conference shall report to its executive committee the way tithe was used within its own operations and also how tithe was used by all divisions, unions, conferences, meals, and so then make a worldwide report. And then an annual report on all of this. The annual report on use of one's own operations is to reflect the full year of operations. The reports on how tithe was used by lower organizations will normally reflect the preceding year because of the time required to accumulate the information from subsidiary organizations. So at one executive committee, I may do the report for 2017 for my own operations and 2016 for all of my subordinate organizations, my subsidiary organizations. Okay? The question always comes up, what about the institutions? Institutions do not report separately, as all tied to institutions will be reflected in the report of the conference, mission, and field. Okay, so if you're doing the report at a conference level, then you would include your academy as far as its use of tithe. So you give a tithe appropriation. Well, when you give the tithe appropriation to the institution, then you would capture how that tithe was used when you did the recording of the appropriation to the institution. So I hope you understand the policy well, and if you don't, just read it and study this out right here. What we're about to present is the SunPlus efforts to help you comply with this policy. So we are going to include in the financial statement a report that looks like this. And the idea being that you run it every month and you track the way your numbers are looking and change things in your transactions. I don't mean change things in your past and your bookkeeping. You might have to do an error correction, but you say, oh, we're not doing enough in this area, or we are looking sort of bad in this area, so let's tone it down next month and beef it up some other place so we end up with a report we're satisfied with. So this is the SunPlus report that we've sort of pulled together, and you can see from the report that is very working policy oriented. GC Working Policy V20, Sources and Use of Tithe. And you can see these letters here, A, B, C, D, E, and then it starts all over again, A, B, C, C1, C2, C3, D, E, F, G, H, are fundamentally following the policy. Section A here is that item listed, and B listed, and each of these categories are listed right out. And the idea that you do tithe exchange has to be considered somewhere in here, and so we have put in this area for transfers of tithe that come from tithe exchange. Okay, and so this is the report that's going to automatically come out of SunPlus. We may modify it somewhat if you watch this and you wish it had last year and this year or something. We could talk about that, but right now this is the format that we have adopted, and we're certainly open for discussions if anyone has a way they would like to see it better. But the rest of the video is going to be about how are we going to keep track of each of these categories so we're able to make this report. I promise you, the first time you say this, you would say, we don't need to change our accounting because I can make this report from the current setup. Well, tithe received from members, you could do each of these incoming accounts correspond with a revenue account, so that's fine. But when you get down to this category here, there's no way to come up with the use of tithe in our current accounting setup. You can answer the question, how much did we spend on pastors, evangelists, and frontline workers? You can't just look at your salary expense or your expenses in account number 81 and put that number down, because some are pastors and evangelists and frontline workers and some are not. How much is spent on headquarters operations? So here are your pastors and evangelists in line A, and your president, secretary, and treasurer in line B. And how much did you spend on education? Well, that's your education department and education appropriations. And how much did you spend on direct evangelism? Well, you may have several departments involved in direct evangelism. How much was spent on medical outreach? At first you think, oh, well, that's just my health department. But if you're spending on training or something on medical outreach, that may be in a different department. It might be something that's happening over in education. Same thing true with literature evangelism and so forth. And so at first we tried to figure out a way to do this by just looking at the combination of accounts and the departmental information, but we couldn't see any way to do it. We have seen attempts by people to try to do it. And if you were in a pinch, you could maybe make some assumptions or analysis that would help you produce it. But we want to produce a report that you're comfortable with making every month so that you can track how you are looking on this instead of just something that you do after the year is over and you hope it looks good. Okay? I wanted to give you that background because at first when you see what we're asking you to do, you may balk. It's completely understandable. But I think in the long run, it's straightforward, it's simple, it's clear to understand, and I think you'll be much happier with what we're proposing. So let me transition now over into the software. Now we're over into the main program. This Sun Systems that we're looking at right now is a version 6.2. If it looks a little bit different than yours, that's okay. We'll upgrade you. This version that we're looking at has already been set up. So I'm going to show you the way it works after we're done setting it up. Then the setup is very simple. Only take a minute to show you that, but mostly I have to show you the way it works. So we go to ledger entry screen open, and we live this thing up here. And let's get us an account number. Let's say 83. Any will do for our presentation here. Now, in our requirements, all along, nothing has changed about this. When we have a revenue and expense account, our rules say you have to enter the fund, the resource, the function, and the restriction. For you that haven't been upgraded yet, the resource is sort of combined with the restriction. We're not worried too much about that. When we get you upgraded, you'll understand it completely. Nothing about an upgrade stops you from doing this right now. We choose the account, then we enter the fund, resource, function, and restriction. In my experience, the accountants the bookkeepers spend no time on that. Right away, almost everything is Fund 10. The resource is usually pretty fast too. Unallocated tithe, unallocated non-tithe, real quick. Then the accountants spend some time on choosing the right department. That's fast. Once you've done it for a few months of choosing your function, you know the department codes, you can almost just enter them. Well, now the same thing is going to be true with restriction. Restriction is going to take a little bit more time, but I promise you, once you've done it a little bit, you will be able to quickly get this done. Also, this is correctable over an account allocation, so if the accountant makes a mistake, it can be changed. The restriction now has been expanded to have lots of categories, so don't let this shock you. So we're clicking this, and you'll see that we have restriction categories that match the policy that we just finished looking over. So each of these rows here represents a type of source or use of tithe. So if the money that we're spending has to do with direct evangelism, we'll click that and we go OK. All right, and now the restriction is 32D, direct evangelism. I realize it adds additional work to the journal entry or the ledger import or whatever it is. It's additional work. However, in just a little bit of time, I think we will all get to be very comfortable with saying, oh, this is a 32D, direct evangelism. Also, like I said before, the account allocation function, just like we can change a function for a department from one function to another, we can change a restriction from one category to another. We want to be careful when we're doing the journal entry, but it isn't so hard to fix. Okay, it's right there and can easily be fixed with the account allocation functionality. Just like you change a function or change a resource, and you've always been able to change a restriction. So if you code it wrong, you can go and fix it. When it shows up on the report incorrectly, you can go and fix it. That is all the bookkeeper needs to know to do. It is definitely additional work, but it is not complicated. So now, how do we set it up? We have these categories. I think what might be a good idea is I will try to remember to attach a listing of all these categories to this video so they're easily accessible. They basically are just following along here, following along the policy manual, 31A, 31B, 32C, just like here. These letters match the policy manual we looked at, and these names match the policy name on their policy requirements. So what we have to do is very simple. You all know how to do this. We'll go over to analysis codes. You've done this a million times. All right, and we're setting this up for restriction, so you will need to do this. And then that gives you the restriction category, and then you will type in the code and the name just like we had over in this journal entry. Same code and name as showed up here when we click this button. You'll type those in and create those codes and this name for each of those categories. Simple to do. The new financial statements that will come out before December will take advantage of these codings. So if you get this set up and you get your accountants running on it, then the new financial statements will immediately start making the report you need, and you can start monitoring the progress and be ahead of the curve on it. Now, there's one other thing that has to be done. Definitely setting up these analysis codes needs to be done by someone who has the power and the right to set up the analysis code. The group your user is in Sun Systems has to have the right to make this change. So not any accountant can create a new analysis code. It needs to be an accountant that has the rights to go into analysis code setup, and you click on analysis code there and you get an error message, meaning that you don't have the right to get into it. You have to get the rights or get somebody who does have the rights. Well, the same thing is true with what I'm about to show you. The next thing that has to be done, besides get up the analysis codes, this is very simple, very, very simple. The person that has the rights to see the business rules, so over in the system, okay, right here, business rules show up. The user that does what I'm about to describe has to be able to see the business rules. If you don't have those rights and you don't know how to get to them, then you need to contact support and let us help you get so you can actually do what I'm describing here. So you see the business rules here. You only see them if you have the rights. The way to find out whether you have access to business rules is to try to change a business rule. That's the simplest way, and if you get error messages, you know you don't have the rights. First off, we have to find the 4 rules that need to be changed. There's 4 of them, and there are 2 sets of 2 to make up the 4. Now, if you're interested in business rules, there's a whole set of videos on editing business rules, but I'm assuming here that you haven't watched those videos. I'd love it if you did, but I'm assuming that you haven't, and so we're going to take it from ground zero and just a little bit extra explanation. In a business rule, you have an event and you have a rule that is under the event. An event is exactly what the name implies. An event is something you're doing in Sun Systems. For example, you push new line in a ledger entry. That's an event. Or you push post. That's an event. There are many, many events, but we have set up and we are using these events right here. Now, in these events in Sun Systems, this is all of them, the 2 that we are interested in is ledger entry end of line. There are 2 rules under that event that need to be modified, and under ledger import end of line, 2 rules under there that need to be modified. In fact, they are the exact same parallel worlds. These are the rules here that govern when you push a new line in ledger entry, and these are the exact same rules as up here, but this is when you do a ledger import. And so under each of these 2 events, we have 2 sets of rules. Let's look at this one. This is a ledger entry end of line. Okay, so we'll select that. Under this ledger entry end of line, we have 2 rules that need to be modified. The first one is this one that has the resource restriction in the name. validate resource and restriction. And then we have UFTF when restriction is 3. These are 2 rules that make the restriction and the resource act well, and to make the UFTF resource play well with the restriction. That's what these 2 rules are doing. To do what we're talking about here, you don't actually have to understand what the rules are doing. Under the ledger entry, there are the rest that needs to be modified and the UFTF that needs to be modified. And we have the exact same parallel world under ledger import. This is ledger import, okay? And the 2 rules that need to be modified is the restriction rule and the UFTF rule. For the sake of clarity and almost boredom, I'm going to change all 4 of those rules, but the way you change them is exactly the same. Basically, you need to know there's 4 rules that need to be modified, and if you know how to modify one, the process is exactly the same for all 4. But for clarity's sake, I'm going to do all of them. So let's just go back here because I like to work from the top down. We'll do the end of line, okay? So we're doing a ledger entry, end of line, okay, where I was just a minute ago. And this ledger entry, end of line. And we're going to change the RES. There we go. The RESC rule right there. This is so simple. A child could do it. So I have them both here like I want them. Then I click OK, and it populates all these fields. And then we go over here, and you see there the rule needs to be open. Okay, just you can double check all this, and then we go to details. This is so simple. Now right here, we don't even have to completely understand the rule, but this rule is asking, is the ledger analysis code 5, is it a 3? 5 is restriction. Is restriction the number 3? Well, under our new arrangement, we have none that are 3. The ones that we've added start with 3. The code starts with 3, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 4, so forth. So we want this rule to work with any code that starts with 3. Not any code that is 3, but any code that starts with 3. See the difference? Okay, I'll reiterate that. Right now, the way it's written, it will work if the ledger 5 is equal to 3. And what we want it to say is ledger 5 is equal to anything that starts with 3. Okay, so we'll amend it. Okay, and this is the important point. This is why you're watching the video, and I click OK. When I click OK, look what's happening up here. When I clicked OK and moved down to here, you keep looking up here, and then I'm clicking OK and it moves down to there. Okay, and I click OK and it moves down to here. And so I'm now able to put the wildcard in there, 1, 2, 3, like that, a few of those. And this says, with this change, it starts with 3. Okay, and we go OK. And we are out of that, modifying that rule. So now the rule reads, if ledger analysis 5 equals to anything that starts with a 3. So we have to do that down here one more time. So we do amend. Now watch up here. I'm clicking OK one time, and you can see that it's now jumped down to here. Okay, I go OK again, and it's jumped down to here. And I go OK again. This is activated. I put in my 3 little asterisks there, and I go OK. And I'm out of the rule. And so now I have amended this rule the 2 places. So we have 2 events. Each event has 2 rules, and each rule has 2 places it needs to be amended. Exit out of here, and I've done one. And I exit out of here, and I have completely done one rule set. I have 4 to do. I know this will bore you, but I'm going to just sit here and do all of them. So I'm still on my second one on end of line. We click that. REC is what I just did. I'll do the UFTF one right there. If it's UFTF, it sets the restriction to 3. Here we go. We've got all of it populated, and we've got open there, and we do details. Okay, and you can see that we have this right down there. And I've clicked it, and it's highlighted right there. I click amend. Okay, now watch up here. I'll click OK, and now this is ready to be changed. Okay, I click OK. This is ready to be changed, and I click OK, and now this is ready to be changed, and I put in my wildcard. Okay, and I go OK, and I've got it. And now I'll come down to the second place that needs to be changed. Okay, I'll come down to my second place that needs to be changed in this rule. Okay, I'll do amend. Okay, I'll do OK, and it highlighted that. Now there's no operator here, so it's going. The next time I click OK, it's going to highlight or activate value 2 here. So I go OK, and I can change this, and I put in my wildcards, and I've updated that rule. All right, and we go OK, and then we go exit, and we can go now, and then we exit out of here, and then I go to rule sets, and I've done half of them that needs to be done, and I know this is a little boring, but just stick with it. It goes fast. And now I want ledger import right here. Ledger import, end of line. I go OK with that. And the first rule that I'm going to modify is the RESC rule right here. Okay, I click that. I'm going to do it real fast here since this is the third time I've showed it to you. And then I click detail. I click that one. And then I amend. And that's highlighted right there. And I go OK. And now that's highlighted or activated. Okay, now the operator is activated, and now I've got the one that I want to change activated, and I go 2, 3, and we go OK. And then we come down to this second line. Okay, let me just keep clicking until I figure out how to get it to go down there. All right, amend. All right, so right now this one is highlighted. I go OK. This becomes highlighted right here. I click OK. This doesn't have anything, so it's skipped right to there. And I go 3 stars, 1, 2, 3, and I go OK, OK. And I've made my amendment, and I exit. All right, and so I've done 3/4 of this. I go rule sets, ledger import. Okay, and then I do my UFTF one. Okay, I go OK, got it all lighted. I click detail here and amend. So this is highlighted. Click OK. This is highlighted. OK, the operator highlights. Then this highlights. All right, and I'm just going to change that to 3 wildcard, wildcard, wildcard. So the rule works in any case. Okay, if it starts with a 3, we go OK, and then we come to this next one, amend. Okay, OK, highlighted that. OK, and now I'm ready to change this. All right, and 2, 3, and we go OK, OK, and then we can exit. Now I know that you're getting tired of watching this video, but just show you what kind of crazy mind I have. I want to go back and check all 4 to make sure that I got all 4 changed. Okay, Don't worry, we can do it really fast. End of line. We'll go OK. And the first one that I needed to change was the RAS. Okay. And I go OK there, and it's all activated. I click details, and you could see the wild card is there. So exit out, rule set, end of line, UFTF, click that, we go OK, details, and you could see that I've got those changed. So that's half of them checked. Okay, the ones with the ledger entry end of line, rule set, import, done. Okay, we got it. I know that it's probably silly me checking, but I like to be careful. And we've got, it looks like we've successfully changed the 4 rules. 2 events with their 2 rules and their 2 places to be changed. And that is all that has to be done. Now, it is possible that you're going to encounter a little bit of difference with these business rules. Nothing about the business rules in spirit is different in 5.4. If you're interested in trying to do this in 5.4, you can, but you're going to have to look a little bit more for those business rules, looking for that restriction and where are the 3s that need to be changed. But the principle is exactly the same. One way to actually do this is to try operating a ledger entry with the new restrictions and then look at the rule that pops up and then go find that rule and fix it. I hope that this helps you, and I hope that all this stuff about business rules doesn't bother you too much, because it's very simple, but it's very important report that we are having to make, and I believe it is valuable from our accountability to the proper use of tithe. You know, the tithe is the heart blood of the denomination. It keeps many things happening, and if we're careful with our stewardship over it, that will build donor confidence, and that is sort of why we accountants are here. So thank you for this, and I hope that you enjoy and can make some really good use out of this. And we're going to have some beautiful reports. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next time.